Cool, cool. Hey, welcome everybody. Just going to be going over to why Mine Ergo, a guide to profitability, sustainability. Probably, a lot of this stuff, probably very familiar with, but we're just going to go through it at a high level, as well as talk about Sigmanauts Mining Pool. Cool. And so what we're going to cover today is understanding Ergo, why it matters, the basics of mining, the Autolykos algorithm, the technical setup, so setting up the rig, the design of the rig, heat and power, as well as the economics, so costs, breaking even, um, various analysis, emission schedule impacts, and then as well as the Sigmanauts mining pool. So who is this for? We have whoever's new to crypto, experienced miners, maybe post-ETH merge. I think generally if you're interested in crypto, it's probably worth looking into proof of work and then at a minimum, maybe potentially even mining it. And so what is Ergo, as I'm sure most people know, but in case you don't, it's a truly fair blockchain launched in 2019, no pre-mine, no ICO, no VC funding. We have built by experts, so former Chainlink and Cardano developers. We have the max supply around 97.7 million, strictly capped. Mission is decentralized finance to accessible to everyone, and then philosophy is fair launch, community driven, and proof of work secured. Uh, so Ergo is a blockchain done right by the people for the people. And so what is mining? So we got the basics. So mining is securing the blockchain network. You provide computational power, hash rate, and the network rewards you with ERG tokens. Um, think of it as getting paid to run a security for a digital bank. Your GPU solves complex mathematical puzzles. The more puzzles you solve, the more you earn. Without miners, the blockchain can't function. Right, we got to secure the transactions, validate the transactions, secure the network rather. And so you're not just earning rewards, you're supporting a revolutionary financial system that is Ergo. And so what makes this so special? So it's ASIC-resistant, memory hard proof of work. It's very GPU friendly. It's very cool. And so a lot of those factors, for me at least, as to why Mine Ergo make it a lot easier on the cards. I know ASICs companies aren't necessarily going to come into Ergo, sort of rug us. So no ASICs. Like to say, right, maybe potentially true decentralization because essentially anybody can go off and buy a GPU. Anybody generally has a probably not hard drive, some sort of desktop computer, potentially with the GPU, maybe a gaming computer. So it's more accessible than potentially mining Bitcoin. And so a critical factor here is the emission schedule. So I believe when I first started mining, it was probably about, I think 75 or 60 ERG was the emission. And so now we're all the way down to 12, I believe. The block time is still static 2 seconds. Going to be changing here soon, I believe. And then our reduction schedule is going to be next. Every 3 quarters, it reduces by 3. So 9 to 6 to 3 should be interesting as things sort of move in that direction. So decreasing supply is going to enable scarcity. And so as miners start to mine more and more of this asset, there'll be less and less from a daily perspective being emitted into the ecosystem. And so understanding mining costs, we have your initial investment, but then you have operating costs. And so your initial investment, right, is going to be your GPUs, your motherboards, your CPUs, your power supply, the frame, everything that you need for the complete compute unit. And then your operating costs, right, are going to be something to the effect of your electricity, which is going to be your biggest operating cost, your internet connection, cooling. I think in ventilation is definitely underexplored here, at least from my experience when I first started mining. Maintenance, and then of course pool fees, which generally is around 1% depending upon which mining pools you go to. So yeah, as we say here, the key insight, electricity rate is the key determining factor for profitability. A secondary, I suppose, might be price itself, right? Because if the price is like, if we're at like 100 ergs and that's going to be a little bit different. But of course, the difficulty is going to change. Um, so what you need to know about mining, right, is your hash rate. So how fast your GPU mines, that's going to be relative to how much ERG you actually earn. Your electricity rate, the network difficulty, so how hard it is to find these specific blocks. GPU power draw, so how much electricity you're actually going to be physically using. And there's differences whether you measure it from the actual device or is it from the software. Obviously you want to measure it from the device, so then that's the most um, sound measurement. Then of course, current ERG price and then the block reward. And again, the block reward is going to change every 3 months or so. And so here is your calculating cost to mine one ERG. And so why do you want to even calculate the cost to mine one ERG? So the idea here is, say it costs $1.50 to mine ERG, and the current cost is, I think, like 70 cents or even 60 cents. You are at a loss. But now if that uh, cost to ERG is, say, $1, but ERG is $2, well, then now you're making 50% more. And so this is what this formula is going to be calculating. And I think as miners, we need to sort of look at it as like a business perspective and potentially even at a minimum pay off your electricity costs. But I think additionally, miners are also looking at a speculative bet. So, hey, maybe one day ERG is going to go up to this, mythical price. And if that's the case, then sell everything and go down and move to the islands or something, right? Whatever other people's dreams are. And so here it is. So it's your hash rate, divide by the network hash, multiplied by the block reward, and then the blocks per day. So that's how much actual ERG you're going to be getting. And then your daily electrical cost. And then once we have those two specific numbers, right? So your daily electrical cost and then the over the daily ERGs mined. And so for example, we have here 150 mega hash consuming 150 watts. I think in this example, right, we're just using kind of nice numbers. I think 150 watts at 150 mega hash is quite high. So and I haven't validated these numbers, so, but in any case, network hash rate 50 terahash. The electricity is 12 kilowatts per hour. Block reward is 12, and so your daily ERG is about a quarter of an ERG. Your daily cost is going to be 43 cents. So then your cost per ERG is going to be $1.67. So you're instantly paying more for your ERG. And so that is that calculation. But again, this could be more of the speculative play. And so, hey, maybe in 10 years, ERG's going to be, $100, $1,000, and I'm just going to sit on this, kind of like the idea of like Bitcoin and miners back then. Yeah, 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 absolutely. Hmm. Yeah, you're good to go. Right. Pay a little premium. Right, right, right. Yeah, exactly. And then that's the key takeaway, right? And so then if your ERG price is greater than your cost to mine, like we were just saying, it's profitable. Otherwise, you're at a loss. And then but a break even is also nice. Um, So yeah, variables change. So the ERG price is going to fluctuate. That's why a lot of miners, like Son of a Tech, he's always saying, to pay off your electricity first, because first and foremost, it's a business. And then if there's any extra, then just hold on to that. But everybody's sort of game plan, I would say, is sort of different. You can certainly gamble by mining. You could say, forget it, I'm just going to pay the electricity bill because I can pay that electricity bill and just gather as much ERG as I want and just kind of see what happens. Um, so yeah, other variables, right? The network difficulty increases block rewards. And then of course your electricity rate. They may come knock on your door and say, hey, you're using way too much electricity. You're going to start, paying more prices, which is, I've heard is this thing. So yeah, so we have long-term ROI considerations. So we, Beyond daily profit, we have hardware depreciation over time. These things are running 24/7. They're going to be collecting dust, inherent entropy within the system, right? Erg appreciation potential is hopeful. Resale of the value of the mining GPUs, that is certainly has been the case. I have seen that maybe less and less in the future. Like, for example, I bought these, what are they? AMD cards, and they were about 750 in 2021, and now they're like $100. And so maybe the resale value of mining GPUs, that could be the case, but currently I don't believe is the case. Tax implications, of course, of the United States. So yeah, HODL strategy, really just, mine at the low prices. Forget your electricity costs, just pay that. Um, and then yeah, right, potential 10x returns, hopefully. We'll see. And then, mining is in a sense, right, dollar cost averaging into ERG. And so, um, but I think there's like certain byproducts potentially of like as a result of that. So if you live in like a colder climate, you could recapture a lot of this energy that is the heat. You could then put that back into your house. I know a lot of people do that. I used to do that when I lived in Colorado, kept my garage very nice and toasty when it was, close to 0 degrees or 20 degrees. And that's just kind of moving into the here. Emission reduction impact. So right now, we have 12 ergs is the block reward. So 8,640 ergs a day. Then we move into 9 ergs. So 6,400 ergs a day, 6 ergs, 4,300, and then 3 ergs forever is going to be 21 ergs. And so will most likely be some sort of squeeze in the amount of just scarcity, right? So early miners, we're saying here, have a massive advantage, especially when we were mining, taking away at like really high rates at like 70 ergs or 65 ergs for the block reward. Uh, no, it's the you have, yeah, and then it's just Demurrage, right, right. Mhm. And so talking about the algorithm, it's a cool algorithm. So it's very good on your specific hardware, which is great for longevity. Because, again, talking about buying equipment, you potentially want to just buy this equipment and never have to buy equipment again. But most likely you're going to be buying secondary used GPUs that have been running for a very long time anyhow. And so you want to run it on something that's going to be running 24/7, running that's not, really stress testing these GPUs who have already been most likely, abused. Power efficiency, I think, again, is like very critical. I used to mine, and I used to say, oh, I just want the highest hash power. But in reality, especially at like economies of scale, you can start to get, at maybe like 1 or 2 GPUs, no big deal. But you get 5, 10, 15, 30 GPUs, this economy of scale with like the specific rigs and all that electricity cost, just it doesn't really make too much sense. Um, And so running cooler means your GPUs last maybe 2 to 3 years longer, 10 to 20% power. You might have some less, rewards within Ergo, but I think again, it's like we want to be able to like mining is like a game that you want to. It's not like to win. You want to just like play the game, and so like that's like the goal here. Not necessarily winners or losers. Just want to keep staying in business. And so, right, so that talks about like longevity. So thermal stress, fan longevity. So if there's any inherent noise that you don't necessarily notice, that's like inherent entropy within the system. And so maybe something's off tilt. And so maybe every 6 months, it's good to have like a plan. Just take off the rigs apart, clean them all off, put some isopropyl alcohol, get all the dust out of that. Especially for the fans, right? Because if you have more mass that is the dust spinning, they're going to have to work harder. Those motors are going to have to work harder, and that's just going to put more just inherent stress on the system. Not good for longevity. So we have a memory intensive mining. So how Autolykos works is a memory hard computation. GPU core sits relatively idle, but we focus on VRAM. 6 GB minimum, 8 GB plus optimal. Of course, different tuning. So underclock the GPU, overclock the memory, reduce voltage. Again, highly recommend. Efficiency is key here. And so, yeah, you want to find that optimization sweet spot. So you can, so again, yeah, like we were talking, right? It's like 80 to 90% of that max hash rate. So you can get, 60 to 70% power. And that even kind of even talks about too, again, like the longevity of things. So, if you've got like a really nice electric rate, and you're using like less power, you can actually put more cards on top of the entire like electrical network that you have, because then in theory, instead of using it, the total capacity, you can maybe fit like one or two extra cards on there to make up for the lowered um, hash rate because of the clocks. Hmm. Yeah, that's fair. Right. Hmm. Totally. Yeah. Yeah, Ken was just talking about, just the efficiency of the cards compared to like something like Kapow and, you know, you really just want to take care of them, It's just like, but you do have a good point to where it's like, I want to maximize for this, 3 month period, because in the next 3 months you're going to be getting arguably less. So then you could even think about it as of like right now, hey, I'm just going to mine until it hits the three. So then your electrical rate is essentially fluctuating, because now you're actually getting more transport. Like a year from now, you're going to be getting less. And so you could like recalculate what the actual cost would be to a future, and I don't know, do some weird accounting, I'm sure. Right. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. I don't know. I'd maybe push back on that, because NVIDIA came out with a card solely for mining. And when they first came out with it, so it's the CMP 170HX. It was 5 grand for that card. Now you were just showing me today it's like 300. So it's like, and that was maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And that's, um, it's like 300, even 400 gigahash or mega hash for that one card, you know, versus I don't know the newest cards they're pumping out, but oh, sure, absolutely, right, yeah, it could be, right. But but what's really nice about mining is we were kind of talking about it a little bit yesterday in one of the side discussions, to where, like Virgin coins, a Virgin wallet, where it's like, you know, it's literally only Erg coming in here is mined, so there's no sense of like, nobody knows where you're at. You're in your own island except the mining pool, but like there's no other transactions like tied to that. And I kind of like that idea, to where, you build up a nice stack, and then, nobody can like tie that to me. It's often, I mean, you can use a mixer, I'm sure, but like people can then see you use the mixer. So it's like a very anonymous way to like just dollar cost average into Erg. You could even move to, you know, um, they have like hosting farms where they like make deals with you, and you just send your stuff to them, and they're like, oh, we'll give you this, electrical rate, and in return. But I'm seeing less and less GPUs do that, more and more ASICs for sure. So. But there's an opportunity, I think, you know, with solar renewables, great opportunity. I think they're relatively cheap. You could build a nice solar farm, there, and then next thing you know, you have free, you're just printing, or because then say all the equipment's all paid off, and then if you've got all the other equipment for the solar paid off, and then you're also, routing that heat to heat your house, you have this really nice, efficient energy making machine where it's just printing erg, everything else is paid off, and then the heat's going back into it. So definitely. So ASIC resistance, so fair mining, and I think that's a huge aspect, because I came into, certain cryptocurrencies, and then it's like, come to find out, you need to buy so much to sort of be able to say, you know, like in Cardano, if you want to create a stake pool, you really kind of need like so much ADA to find the block or create the mint the blocks. Versus Ergo, you can just say, hey, I'm gonna buy this GPU setup, just point to the pool and you're making money like ready to go. Um, and it could be even used as like a burning mechanism. You could be like, okay, hey, this guy needs needs some erg, and just turn on a rig and then anonymously like fund them or something like that. That's what we're talking about. But um, so fair competition, your GPU competes on an equal footing. True decentralization, so mining power stays distributed globally, ideally. Um, Dynamic protection, so scheduled memory increase, brick any ASIC attempts, and then community focus, so mining rewards stay with individual miners. And I think that's a huge one. I think with the whole ASIC thing, like we really, want to. I think we've seen the rise and the fall of like the various chains that have then said, okay, hey, we'll allow ASICs to come in. Here we have a hard, yeah. Well, I think it's the algorithm, right? So it's like we decided to use this algorithm, and then we'd have to fork it, I guess, to change the consensus layer. That is the algorithm. Mm, hmm. Yeah, I'm not too sure. Mm, right. Mm, yeah. Only time will tell, I suppose. Hopefully. Yeah. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can say all these things, but we'll see what comes out in the wash, I suppose, right? And so here's some of the hardware requirements at a minimum. If I know, I think we were at 4 gigs for the VRAM like maybe a few years ago, and then it went up to 6. And so I had a couple 4 gig cards that obviously wouldn't be able to support this anymore. But I think that's an opportunity for some sort of side chains that's been talked about. So then we have single GPU and multi GPU. So yeah, your single GPU really is going to be like your gaming PC, maybe your workstation, testing the waters, low barrier to entry. Um, ROI potentially 12 to 18 months. We say typically, but who knows in this market. Um, so it's sort of a smaller investment depending on like what sort of setup you have. It could be zero because you could have already potentially have it. Now your GPU setup, this can be somebody for, it's like, all right, I want to, really want to get into this. You have the electricity cost. That's like one thing. It's like, it's one thing to be like, hey, I'm going to do all this. I'm going to run 5 gigahash, but then it's like, well, do you have the electricity to do it? Do you have a 30 amp outlet? Can you pay for somebody to like install the 30 amp outlet? Do you need 50 amps? What's the safe like wattage to run on 30 amps? Knowing all that stuff. Even like the cords is like extremely important because if you say, hey, I want this specific card to run at, 300 watts, but it's the cord is only good for like 250, you're going to start a good fire. And so that's definitely, and or even like, you're using a specific like 3D printed hanger. So one time I 3D printed and created my own hangers, and so they'd hang, and you have like an open air frame kind of going through it, and sort of like and I was actually just at breakfast with my wife, and I was looking at the camera, and then as I was looking at it, one of the GPUs fell because after a couple months, and I was using PETG, but after a couple months of just being warmed up, the screws started to sort of create the hole a little bit bigger and bigger, and then eventually just would fall out. So it's always good to, again, have those sort of like backups and cameras and, things because it would suck to put $3,000 to $10,000 down into this, get it all set up, brick a machine, brick like a motherboard, create a fire for, all of this sorts of stuff. So definitely do the single GPU setup first, get your feet wet. Right, yes. Typically, right, yeah. Probably a lot longer now, as of yesterday. These were made, yeah, a few days ago. No. But yeah, I mean, I think that's it's a good point. So Grayman mentioned, college students, they don't have to pay for their electricity. So that's a great like vector or even Airbnbs. I've heard people get Airbnbs, will see that they have like a 30 amp port over their entire like setup, get like free electricity. It's a way to do it for sure. And so let's break down the different mining rig components. So we have open air, which is nice, but it has a lot of like different moving parts. And so I think again, kind of going back to that idea of like entropy, if you have like a lot of components moving within the system, something is bound to break, and you're sort of like as strong as your weakest link. So if like a PCIe board riser goes out, well then that's down, but then you've got to move everything, and if you've got I've had at most like 13 cards in there, and you have like the chords like managed very nicely. It's kind of a pain in the butt to take one card out, switch that out. I I prefer the server cases. Like on Amazon, you can get them, I think, for like 500 bucks. You can put 8 cards in there. It comes with fans. It runs Windows, but you can put in, of course, Hive OS or anything like that. Um, highly recommended. And those are stackable. Then you can move them anyway. Versus the open airframes, definitely not the case. Mhm. Totally. Right. Totally. Yeah, a lot of aftermarket parts out there right now. Probably for cheap, you could just put something. Mhm. Right. Yeah. Totally. Yeah, I think definitely. The thing I think you need to worry about potentially with mining with that sort of approach is like there's a lot of move to LLMs being moved to like local. So I think before, the video game group was getting upset with like crypto people because they're buying all the GPUs, but now I think there's going to be a move to where now all of the crypto guys are going to be upset with the AI guys trying to buy all the GPUs because I think there really will be more of like a privacy sort of thing with LLMs and being like, hey, I want to run it on my stuff. I don't want people knowing like what my prompts are and things like that. And I think the tools are generally moving more towards open source and being able to run them sort of locally. And it's pretty easy to do. We've done it. We've committed a couple websites. So just some sort of food for thought there. And then I think that even kind of goes into the idea of like, hey, I could create like my own LLM setup. And then when my family's not using it, maybe from like 10 p.m. to like, 6 a.m., it's just mining Ergo. And it just has like that script that's running. All right, okay, cool, turning off into offline mode. Now I'm just gonna mine Ergo, turn it back on. Now back to home LLM or whatever the case. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, home LLM or whatever, LLM you want to call it. Yeah, 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 exactly. Because I think as we move further down with LLMs, and I know I'm kind of veering off a little bit, but like, you could have like your cameras set up with like different MCP servers and, cameras in your house, you maybe want to access that LLM to have that. But then now maybe Google or OpenAI or all these people sort of, have this data that is like your kids or your family. And so I think that's where the privacy is going to maybe potentially come in you know, or just listening to you and you just want to be able to say, hey, home LLM XYZ, you don't want it to, right? Yeah. Totally. And then it's like, cool, we have our own little LM setup. It does whatever that needs to do. But that same infrastructure can then be flipped on its head when we're not using it to then run at night in Mine Ergo. And then plus they're both going to generate heat. So I think there's opportunity there to create, heat, especially for like things like, hot yoga. Like makes no sense to just have like a heater when you're just constantly going to be like purposely heating something. So it kind of maybe makes sense to have like a bunch of miners running even if you are, and that's where I think, the heat perspective, you could even flip the electricity cost on its head because then it's like, well, I don't really care. We're going to burn this electricity anyways, but now we get another asset to kind of go inside of it and just like we just get that and then we just actually get a discount now. So I think a lot of the mining stuff is really kind of how you look at it. So maybe one way it looks like a circle, and then like the other way it looks like a square, sort of like, that kind of famous example, right? Just depends on like how you're looking at it. So yeah, understanding the problem. So each GPU generates 100 to 200 watts of heat. Six GPUs could produce 1200 watts of heat, equivalent to a space heater. And of course, we're not even talking about noise. The noise is also a big problem. So I'll just continue here. So single rig heat management. So yeah, right. We're just talking room positioning. So keeping away from walls. I think one of the big things with mining, people don't really think about is this concept called like heat transfer. And so really it's the idea of like you have like something generating heat, but we're not really thinking about like how are we going to actively like move that out of like this like system. And you could like think of this room as like a closed system, I suppose. And if you have heat, how's it going to generate and eventually low or assimilate to like the main temperature. So like if you think of it like water, so if you have like water that is like room temperature, but then I pour a little bit of water, eventually it'll take some amount of time for this whole water to be the same temperature. And so that's sort of like what heat transfer is. And you want to be able to effectively, especially if you're trying to minimize the effect of the heat, you want to be able to understand. So like some people will create like a rig room and then they'll create like and they'll keep a heat wall and then they'll create their excess. So they're kind of creating some insulation sort of in that sort of slow or helps to translate the heat in some manner. Cool, cool, cool. So yeah, multiple rigs, definitely a lot of heat. The challenge scales up. So 10 GPUs, of almost close to 2,000 watts of heat. It is very hot, very loud. The infrastructure needs, I mean, and that's like a serious setup. Even 30 GPUs, it's like sometimes they go down, you got to turn them back on. It's definitely, some months they can run like no big deal, and then other months it's like, dude, every week I gotta, all right, messing with it. And it's like oh, hey, honey, I'll be right back. I gotta do something to the rigs, and it'll be like a few hours later, and it's like, okay, I'm finally done. Um, so a lot of problem solving, but like for me, I really enjoy that because it could be a bunch of different things. Um, so yeah, so we have smart solutions. So yeah, maybe you got basement mining. So warm air rises. So if you're gonna mine, put it into the lowest point of that you can. So eventually the heat will actually rise. Garage with ventilation. So I was mining in my garage, and so the warmer months I was actually to open up both garages, and so I was able to just draft that heat super fast, which was really really nice. But the problem with that is inherently that's a warm solution or a warm like area, so bugs are going to naturally like attract to that spot. So for the open air sort of cases, I'd have to go in there and get some air in a can and just like just clean that all up, because otherwise that organic matter will just collect up, create dust, and eventually could catch fire. No good. It's one thing to get, involved with mining and tell your wife, "Hey, we're gonna put 10K into mining, do all that stuff, to only cause a fire." How stupid would you look, I guess. So in hot climates, AC costs are going to probably kill a lot of profits. But I think that is kind of where you need to put your engineering hat on and sort of see how can you. So the idea here is you got to keep the actual cards cool, not necessarily the exhaust. And so if you can keep that airflow, what's called laminar, but also like over the card at that same temperature, whether it's called like 100 degrees, I guess, whatever, I think Celsius. No, that doesn't sound right. Fahrenheit. Yeah, Celsius. Okay, yeah, that's okay. Then that's fine, or if that's, or keep it, 80 or 90 degrees Celsius, no big deal as long as it doesn't skyrocket up. But it's definitely a hard problem to do. So maybe mine at night. Again, it's all about your specific, like where you are, where you're located. Maybe there's an opportunity to build some sites on land. Maybe you can dig down in the ground. You can actually build up vents and off gas that heat to some sort of like, you know, greenhouse, things like that. There might be an opportunity, especially out here in Colorado. They grow a lot of pot from my understanding. They probably spend a lot of money on heat. So what if they had a bunch of ergo miners underneath somewhere and then off gassing that heat and back into the grow house? And so that would be like a huge net positive. Um, there was actually I went on a tour like on one of the dispensaries, and they actually built the heating mechanism outside of the property, which makes no sense because now it's not even insulated. So now you have hot air leaving the building, going outside to where it's cold, and then going back in. It's like, no, you should have kept that inside. So again, it's all about like, efficiency for the cards, but then also efficiency from a environmental perspective. Um, yeah, right. Yeah, we need to do like a chain cash, and then we'll buy a bunch of property, and then maybe a barter system to be like, okay, who's gonna build the deck? Okay, Mark's gonna build the mining setup, and so on and so forth. We need a like a senior design project or something, right? For all this. So electricity's rates definitely matter the most, right? So 5 cents to 10 cents. I got 11 cents. I was okay with that at the time. And so so I was running like 5 gigs, 5 gig a hash, probably like a year ago. And I was probably about like 300 to 400 bucks a month. Um, I don't remember how much erg it was, but which is irrelevant, I suppose now, just because of the scheduling. So I don't know if that's a typo. So what are the rates? Many utilities charge. Oh, I see. Right. So different rates. And so off-peak times versus peak hours. And so again, going back to that sort of LLM sort of concept, maybe it makes sense to run it on cheaper at night, the weekends, not using it. So it's going to be a lot cheaper, but versus like peak hours. And then additionally, it's like a note about peak hours. Peak hours are also correlated most likely with peak temperature hours. So it's like if I'm in a hot environment anyways, and then I'm also like getting charged a lot for electricity, probably doesn't make a lot of sense to be mining now that during that time anyways. And I think it's okay to turn your rigs off. Sometimes maybe you've had like a bad month. Yeah. Yeah, so for most mining pools on Ergo, it's PPLNS, so it's pay per last N shares. And so N is set by like the mining pool, and ours right now is like one half. And so you could just think of this as like a window. And so like so say the last 12 hours are all the shares you're gonna like get calculated for. So if you just started you're not going to have a lot of shares within the last 12 hours, and so you get penalized for that. But if you get onboarded to the pool after those 12 hours, you now have the maximum full amount of shares that you could possibly have. But then if you like onboard another gigahash, your shares amount potential will then increase because now you have more potential shares to be able to submit within that 12-hour window. So if you turn it off, and it really depends, like on Sigmanauts Mining Pool, it just depends on like when we find blocks. So like say for example, you're like maxed out on your 12-hour window. We find a block and that was like high difficulty. Then we have find our effort. Then we find another block within like, an hour. Then we find another block within, you're gonna have a high participation because it's been it's you have the maximum amount of like shares. But say during between the second and third block, you like I'm turning off for the night, you're still gonna have say 90% of that window covered um, because you have 1 hour less, call it or whatever like the math like works out to. But then it goes from 1 hour to 6 hours, well now you have 6 hours left of those last shares. And it really just depends on what the N is. And so again, ours is one half, but you could put like four, which could be like weeks. You could do like months. So then, but those are like obviously really old shares, and it's like, we don't really care about that. We just care about like these more recent shares. So that's a way to do that. So then we have solo mining versus pool mining. So you mine alone. If you get a block, you get all the rewards. Very unpredictable, but really it's only unpredictable in the sense of if you have like a small amount of, I mean, I'd say it is predictable, but it's just you're not going to get paid a lot because or soon because if you have like 100 gigahash, it's going to take like 30 days. But you could have like a lot of luck, find it like within the first hour. That happened to me. I was like 500 gigahash and I found like two blocks, and I was doing like a test pool, and it was just me on there. It was just like, oh well, that works out. No, no, no. And then this pool mining, depending on the fee, you sort of split your hash rate, and then whenever anybody on the block finds a block, or anybody on the pool finds a block, then we all split that with respect to our participation, which is calculated by the PPLNS calculation. And then we also have the small fee. So then we take that erg reward, we calculate that fee, the pool keeps the fee, and then from there the PPLNS gets like added to the shares of like the database. I thought I fixed this, but at one point the SigmaKnots mining pool was 1%. It's variable, so if you want to vote it to 2 and it passes, we'll vote it to 2. If you want to vote it to 0, we can vote it to 0. Um, any miner on our pool, if they want a DAO token, we'll give it to you. So we're distributing storage rent. We have bonus tokens, doing a bunch of other different things. But then we also, of course, have hero miners, which I believe they're also distributing, or I know they're collecting Demurrage. I don't know how exactly they're distributing it. Oh, okay. Uh-huh. Right. Okay. Well, the way we do Demurrage distribution is we do it like one for one. Um, participation. So for that block, we'll like calculate your participation. We'll then take that same we like back calculate it, but we grab that value and then we multiply that by whatever like the erg amount we got from Demurrage. So if it's like 10 erg and your participation was 10, then you'll get one. And then that's paid. Traditionally, that'll be paid every Tuesday. Um, but there's some sniping wars sort of happening. Sorry, say that again. Yeah, for sure. There was like an opportunity a few months ago where there was Cannon can correct me, but I think there was like 1,000 SIG USD in Demurrage. Wasn't it something like that? Or there was like 1,000 in token value. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So definitely the incentive is there. Okay, that's what it was. Yeah, SIG RSV. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So let's see. And it says two miners, it's two. I think they do what does anybody know what their payout is? It's not PPLNS, right? It's like what it's like a Bitcoin. Isn't it a bit like Bitcoin pools do it? No? Okay. Fair enough. Um, okay. So yeah, talking about the Sigmanauts. So we have a DAO run on Paideia. Everybody has a say in the pool. We actually have 10,000 ergs in our treasury, which is awesome. Only pool right now distributing, well, that's not true. Sorry, I thought I fixed the storage rent, but the only pool distributing bonus tokens to our miners. I think at one point we had like 60 tokens that we'd airdrop all at once to, I think at most we had like 60 people. So that's kind of cool. Um, we're supporting the ecosystem, so fees fund Ergo development and community projects. All decisions voted on the community are all open, active, Discord and Telegram. We have a bunch of different alerts, so every time we find a block, really good group of guys. If you're interested in mining, people are there from like, all over the world. So if you have a question, generally somebody's on there, answer like whether it be about mining and something I really like about our mining community is I like to think that all the miners are devs in hiding. They just don't know it yet. They have like a technical ability of be able to spin up a miner, put up the OS, that takes some, noodling within the terminal and things like that. And so we were actually able to get two of our miners to join the last hackathon. So that was pretty neat. And so storage rent is Ergo's unique feature. So rent, and so this is also Demurrage. It's collected from unspent boxes older than 4 years, prevents the blockchain bloat, and provides additional revenue for the miners. Um, and so here's just some sample current revenue. This is free money for the most part. It's just there. It blows my mind that people don't consolidate their boxes that are more than 4 years old, but maybe they left the community. Um, and so yeah, on SigmaKnots Mining Pool, I wrote a script that will distribute it all proportionally to the SigmaKnots miners based upon our participation in the database. Um, it increases your effective earnings. I guess we're the only. Well, I guess Grayman said they're distributing it, but equally. I'm be curious to see how exactly. So that's right. It would be it would be good on us to put from a transparency perspective, be like, hey, this is exactly how we're doing this. Just all the FAQs and stuff. I'll have to take a note of that. But yeah, our fee is 1%. So sorry for all the spam of the zero point 0.9. Our minimum threshold is 0.5. We did create this protocol. I don't know if it's really a protocol, but essentially you could mint an NFT. You could then inscribe in this NFT your minimum or your payout threshold. And then our system would then pick that up based off like our collection ID. And then from there, it would automatically change your payout threshold without having to like message me or anything like that. So a little bit more permissionless sort of payout thresholds. Because we have some miners, right? They might have like 50 gigahash and they might be making, you know, 10, 20, 30 gigs or ergs a day. And if it's zero point 0.5, there's just getting a lot of spam. And so from like maybe even a tax perspective, it's nicer to have it in one transaction as opposed to like 5 transactions a day. Plus, from the mining pool perspective, I'd say we don't want to make 5 transactions a day if we can just make the one to save on the TX cost, I suppose. So yeah, if you need to get help, we're pretty active on Telegram and Discord. Let's see. Mining with Sigmanauts isn't just about profit. It's about supporting the true decentralization and being part of the community that believes in Ergo's vision. Mining fees fund ecosystem development, not just corporate profits. And then, of course, we can vote on those specific developments. It's not, something like, hey, I want to do this and we're going to spend this. It needs to be, voted on everybody. So if you want to get started with mining Ergo, you need a mining wallet. So Nautilus is what I would recommend. Get a mining software. Really kind of depends on it's NVIDIA or AMD. Mine to the SigmaKnots Mining Pool. Check out, I think it's ergominers.com is our dashboard. You configure the miner within your wallet. Start mining and monitoring the pool dashboard. Again, join our socials. So here's a couple different mining options. Just kind of for the sake of time, kind of get through these. So yeah, optimize again for efficiency here. So yeah, why Ergo? So we got the cooler algorithm, uh, better for GPUs, declining emissions, so for scarcity. So I think that's been like a big thing for a while. And so now we're actually like in the next year, we're going to see that play out. And, is that sort of narrative true? I don't know. We'll find out. ASIC resistance, storage rent income, an active ecosystem, no pre-mine or ICO. We're going to be mining until 2045 and expert developers. So resource and links. Start your mining journey today. Comments, questions, concerns. Yeah. What is my, yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I think, Sigmanauts, I think we probably have, the way I'm thinking about it, we'd have like 2 separate options. And I'm still sort of fuzzy on like the entirety, you know, aspects, but I think we could probably have like a SigmaKnots mining pool is how we run it today. But then also, huh? Yeah, I think we could do that, irrespective, but we could probably have to do a DAO vote if we wanted to do, one or the other or do both, you know. I'm completely open with what, the DAO wants to do. So, kind of open to, so absolutely. Yeah, true. Right, right, right. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that would be a really. I'm not sure if Mining Core does that. I mean, Cheese, do you know? Like, it is does. Okay, sick. Right. Hmm. Totally. Yeah. He's- Yeah, yeah, some guy named Oliver. But yeah, that'd be a really cool idea because I mean, and then can you overstuff the transaction? So if I'm like in the pool, right, and you're saying, hey, I want to make the transaction, could I like put as much as I want in there? And then that would essentially push out, right? Mhm. Right. Yeah, that'd be a cool idea because right now for our bonus tokens, we're doing that once a week and okay. Yeah, no, that's definitely a good. I'll be relying on cheese there to, to help us out. Sweet. All right, cool. Any questions online? I don't think so. All right, cool.